Chapter 1. Change of Plans.
This is the story of Maximilian, an ordinary young man who is thin and tall with no distinctive physical features. He is 22 years old, recently finished his higher education in business administration, and is the youngest of three siblings. He has always lived in the shadow of his two successful sisters. One is a doctor and the other is a lawyer. Both have established careers and are highly accomplished professionals. Currently, Maximilian works part-time as a kitchen assistant at one of the most popular restaurants in St. Edward, USA. He also takes on multiple side jobs to pay his bills at the end of the month. When he has extra money, he indulges his passion for fantasy topics. His parents worry about him and constantly remind him to grow up, make better decisions, and focus on his life. For now, he is called Maxie, though he doesn't like it because it makes him feel inferior for not having a clear plan for his future. He is a very good student. He graduated second in his class because he's highly dedicated, and his academic record is impeccable. It's expected that he'll become a great professional. However, he hasn't yet managed to connect with the professional world the way others have. He just wants to feel excited about his work and have the chance to prove himself in a suitable role. He's a genius at analysis and problem solving, but unlike his former university classmates, he doesn't have the right connections. This is why he hasn't found a job where he can apply his knowledge, move out of his small room on the outskirts of the city, and showcase his immense talent to everyone, especially his family. Maxie takes public transportation to get to work every day. During this couple-hour commute, he questions whether there's truly something beyond what we see. Why are humans limited to the obvious? Why can't we discover our capacity for marvelous things? This thought is fueled by the fiction books he reads, the series he watches, and the magazines he collects on these topics during his trips. Once he gets off the bus, he returns to reality. He enters his workplace and begins his daily routine. He cleans his station, stores food, and prepares basic recipes in the kitchen. He follows instructions and makes mistakes from time to time, but he always gives his all. Once his shift is over and he doesn't have another task, he goes home to continue cultivating his hobby. Maxie has very few friends and enjoys his space and solitude. No girl has ever agreed to go out with him because he's shy. He doesn't exude confidence, and no one likes that. He rarely talks to his parents to avoid lectures about his lifestyle, and even less with his sisters. They're too busy with their jobs and families. However, Natalia, the eldest, helped him get this part-time job and never lets him forget it. In his apartment, he's king, the best and most capable. No one tells him no, and he calls himself Max because it sounds better than Maxie. There, he has devoured books on the paranormal and read and re-watched fantasy stories thousands of times, imagining himself as the protagonist and relishing those moments. He has written several texts of his own that he'd love to publish someday. However, he knows he's not a professional writer and is sure his writing is full of errors. Still, he finds great satisfaction in writing and developing adventures. This is the only constant in his lifestyle, and even though he's doing fine at work, he feels that something more is waiting for him. One morning, he received an urgent call from the restaurant. He was supposed to have the day off, but a coworker was sick and didn't show up, so he had to cover for him. He left home in a hurry after taking a quick shower and skipping breakfast. When he arrived, his supervisor assigned him to an unfamiliar area, but he handled it well. They offered him the night shift and gave him the next day off. It was perfect. The new volume of the comic he'd been waiting for was about to be released, and he could read it in peace. Although the shift was tough, everything went well. After cleaning his area and closing his station, he headed home. It was late, but he couldn't afford a taxi. He grabbed his things, said goodbye, and went to the bus stop. There, he noticed a beautiful girl who gave off an intriguing vibe. She was almost as tall as he was. In her sky-blue eyes, he could see fire. Her black hair, tied in a braid, gave her a superhero aura. She probably didn't even notice him as she walked past. She met up with another young man who also had a special presence. They were probably a couple, though they didn't show any affection. He thought they were looking for something because they seemed worried. When the bus approached, he looked back and saw that the peculiar pair was no longer there. He lost sight of them. Unfortunately, he had rushed out of his house and hadn't taken enough money for a second bus, so he walked a few blocks to get home. The neighborhood atmosphere wasn't pleasant, but it wasn't unsafe either. That night, there was something strange in the air. His thoughts, which had been focused on reading comics, were interrupted when dogs started barking loudly and cats ran around everywhere. He quickened his pace, and just before reaching home, everything fell silent. He felt cold and noticed that no one was around. He took a few more steps and saw an unsettling shadow in the air. A few meters from his house, a hooded figure floated in the sky, its head turned in all directions as if searching for something. He told himself that what he was seeing was impossible, surely a product of his imagination. But when he took another step, the shadow looked at him, locking eyes with him and rendering him unable to move. In an instant, the terrifying figure stood before him. He couldn't make out anything, no face, no clothes, nothing. The shadow had paralyzed him. Fear took over, preventing him from screaming or moving. His intuition told him that this might be the end, and he decided that if he was going to die, he would die fighting. A force unlike anything he had ever felt before enveloped his entire being. His body began to move again. He had never been in a fight before, so he simply acted on instinct. He clenched his right fist as tightly as he could and swung it at the shadow, which raised a hand and stopped him. For the first time, he made out a face, and even more clearly, a smile. The shadow let out a deep roar, grew larger, and lunged at him, covering his entire body. Max moved, kicked, and punched in all directions, but he couldn't shake off the shadow, which remained stuck to him. Suddenly, he realized he was floating in the air. A fleeting thought crossed his mind. This is the weirdest dream I've ever had. Everything turned black, and he woke up in his bed, still wearing the clothes he had worn the previous day. It was almost noon. He jumped out of bed, showered, ate some cereal, and ran to the bookstore to pick up his long-awaited comic book. As he walked, he mentally revisited the crazy yet exciting dream he'd had. Given how saturated his subconscious was with fantasy stories, it wasn't strange for him to have such dreams. He hoped that the beautiful girl he'd seen the night before would appear in his next dream. He smiled at the thought as he arrived at the bookstore, which wasn't far from his apartment. Before buying his coveted volume, he browsed to see if there was anything new to clear his mind a bit. He didn't find many new releases, so he went straight to the comic section. On one of the store's walls, his shadow was distorted, as if emitting thin smoke. When he approached the wall and extended his arm, it seemed as if his silhouette were dissolving. Plus, he had never seen his shadow so dark. He tried to justify this by thinking that it might be the store's LED lights, perhaps because he was emitting a lot of body heat. After buying his comic, he stopped by a pizza stand to grab his favorite food. He planned to read his story in peace at home. Once home, he settled in to dive into this new and exciting read. He left his phone charging in the kitchen, got comfortable on his bed, opened the magazine and the pizza box, and his grand adventure lasted about 20 minutes. Max was satisfied with the story, but he had some questions and decided to do a little online research. He remembered that he had left his phone charging in the kitchen. Since he was so comfortable, he wished that his phone would appear next to him. Just as he was about to get up, he looked to his right and saw his phone. He frowned and shrugged. Then he made a puzzled face, looked around, and started researching the release date of the next comic volume. Just then, his sister Vanessa texted him about a job opportunity. One of her lawyer colleagues needed someone to crunch some numbers. With this gig, he could make some extra money. He changed into something more formal and headed out. This kind of task was simple for Max. He was good with calculations, and the job wasn't too difficult. He finished earlier than planned.
After getting paid, he headed home, once again remembering his strange dream. He retraced his route from the night before and, this time by choice, walked for a while before reaching home. It wasn't too late. As he noticed his shadow, he saw that it was denser than before. However, it no longer emitted the thin smoke he'd seen at noon. As he turned a corner, he unexpectedly ran into the girl from the bus stop. She was wearing the same black jacket as the day before, but was now accompanied by another man. He was dressed in a wine-colored trench coat and hat and had a more menacing aura. It was clear they were searching for something in the area. Their expressions reflected their concern. They disappeared in an instant. Lost in thought, Max didn't realize he'd wandered into a dead-end alley. As he tried to leave, he ran into two men waiting to rob him. The men brandished their knives. They clearly had experience with muggings. Max had had a great day and easily earned some extra money, so he wasn't about to give in. Anger surged through him, and he remembered his dream, which gave him strength. With a quick movement, he pushed one of the thieves who flew far from the impact. Both Max and the other thief were stunned. He had never realized he possessed such strength and speed. The second thief tried to stab him, but before he could, Max saw a hand emerge from his body, grab the thief's arm, and twist it. Max clenched his right fist and delivered a powerful punch to the thief's face. Like his partner, the thief was sent flying into the wall and knocked unconscious. Max ran as fast as he could without looking back. He arrived home with a mix of emotions: fear, excitement, surprise, strength, doubt, and who knows how many more. He took a deep breath and held it for 10 seconds. Feeling a bit calmer, he noticed that he was still emitting stronger traces of shadow. Not only that, but his hands were producing shadows like the ones he'd seen the night before. He immediately realized that it hadn't been a dream, but rather something that had actually happened. Now, something inside him had changed everything, and he didn't know what to do. He had no one to confide in about what was happening to him. He started pacing back and forth uncontrollably and breathing erratically until he became anxious. His loneliness weighed heavily on him. Unable to regain control, he fainted on the floor. When he opened his eyes, he was standing in an unfamiliar place. There was only darkness, and he wished he could see. At that very moment, the space lit up. His hands no longer emitted strange shadows. They were back to normal. He turned around instinctively and came face to face with the hooded figure. The shadow was now more defined. It was a tall, thin, elderly man. He looked at Max and said with a smile, "Maximilian, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am Achilles, the sixth bearer of the shadow. It is an honor for me to pass on the mantle that has accompanied me, along with the burden it represents." Max stared at him in shock. His voice was warm yet threatening. He replied, "Achilles, why me? What is this about? I don't think I have the qualities needed to carry any mantle, much less one that comes with such a heavy burden. Just look at me. I don't have the physique or posture for something like this. I'm just an ordinary young man with an ordinary life." Achilles interrupted him. "Young man, I don't have much time. I can't give you all the answers right now either. The only thing I can tell you is that I saw something in you that I haven't seen in a long time, not even in myself when I received this mantle. I firmly believe that you will revolutionize the world between worlds, and finally fulfill this power's true purpose, a purpose that even I have misused while bearing the shadow within me. Max fell into a state of desperation. He knew there was more to this world than met the eye, but now that he was experiencing it firsthand, he wished it wouldn't happen. He wished that when he opened his eyes again, he would be lying in his bed in the middle of the night, checking his watch to see how much time he had left before work. He screamed that it was all a dream and that it was time to wake up, or else he'd be late. But nothing happened. Achilles remained in front of him, seemingly saying something Max couldn't hear. He could only see his lips moving. So he raised his hands to shoulder height, signaling for Achilles to stop talking. Then he repeated, "I'm just an ordinary young man. I'm not strong at all. I have to go to work, wait for the right moment to get a job in administration, fulfill my obligations, and stick to my plans." Achilles interrupted him again, and with an intense smile said loudly, "Maximilian, let me tell you that from now on, there's a change of plans.